What Huey Lewis song do you commit your murders to? From Houston to the moon and all the way back. Welcome to Channel 8 and a half. Hello and thank you for joining us at Channel 8 and a half, a show about movies and TV. My name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, what are we talking about this week?
Well, Joe, it is the week of 4th of July, so naturally today's theme is America. Basically, all movies about American culture, American wars, American politics. And, we did have a conversation over text this morning because when we first talked about this theme, we were pretty vague about the subject, right? I mean, initially it was just America. And,
And I went in a different direction with it, though. See, when I first thought about this, I thought movies that literally have American in the title, because this is kind of a thing that bothers me.
yeah. Well, and that's why I was curious. Is my first question to you was what did come to mind? Because I had something completely different, but I'm curious to hear what movies came to mind.
Well, no, here's my thing with movies that have American in the title is it's so lofty. And it is lofty and it bugs
Yeah.
me and it makes it feel like, to me, I don't know, maybe this is just me, that it's more grand than it deserves to be. Like, I have the same thing with movies that have welcome in the title. Have you ever noticed this?
Like, give me an example.
There's a movie with Kristen Stewart and James Gandolfini called Welcome to the Rileys. And it's
Hmm.
all about Kristen Stewart. She's a stripper, and James Gandolfini like saves her. And his family's name is Riley, like the last name. So it's Welcome to the Rileys. It's dumb. It is, but it's so like it's so vague and dumb though as a title. Does it have to say American in the title? Because if it, and as I was thinking about it, I got less and less annoyed by it because there are
Yeah.
some like American Psycho, right? American
Hmm.
Psycho earns the fact that it's called American. It is very much a movie about an American Wall Street guy and the type of person he is as a psychopath, hence American Psycho. But then you get something like American Sniper, right?
That's literally at the top of my list.
Which, why is it called American Sniper? I guess because he's in the military and he's a sniper, but really, why does it have to be American Sniper? It doesn't.
Well, it's definitely indicative of Clint Eastwood's viewpoint on American politics and the current wars, right? I think American war movies tend to fall in three kind of distinct categories. And I mean, maybe they don't all, but there's the guns blazing, we are the best glorification of war type movies. There's the dark and gritty war movies that tend to touch on the psychological state of a soldier or empathy toward the quote unquote enemy. And then the third is, the indifferent war films that don't necessarily lean to either side.
Can you have a war film that doesn't lean to either side, though?
I
I don't
think
think that's
Zero
possible.
I think Zero Dark 30 doesn't lean to either side.
I think by the nature of what it is, though. See, I think that no matter what, especially a Middle Eastern movie, a Middle Eastern war movie,
Mhm.
is going to have a certain. I don't think you can ever do an unbiased war movie just for the fact that you are going to be putting the main character as on one side or the other, and it needs to sympathize with that character. And I don't think you sympathize with Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, but I think you understand her and you understand the motivations that she has. Whereas and again, we're biased because obviously Zero Dark 30 and we are American. So we're going to look at it from a biased lens also.
True. I think Zero Dark 30 is less biased about the methods in which they gained information. I think that's maybe the lens I'm looking at it through. Is a lot of the criticism that Zero Dark 30 garnered was in regard to the use of torture
Yeah.
by the United States. And I don't think that it glorified it necessarily. I think it was right down the middle. I don't think it went either way. It showed it because those were the methods in which we did attain that information to hunt and catch Osama bin Laden or hunt and kill Osama bin Laden. But I don't think it leaned either way. But yeah, I agree. But at the same time, this Full Metal Jacket, I haven't watched it in so long, but I feel as though it has more of a more of a criticism on the American military than it does on the enemy, and maybe it is biased in that way. So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe
Oh, I think it's definitely a more swaying against the military in that portrayal, especially in Vietnam movies. Vietnam War movies usually are always going to have that type of bias of, "Hey, we shouldn't have been there." But if you're looking for speaking of movies with American in the title, though, if you're looking for a Vietnam movie with American in the title, there's a movie called The Quiet American. I don't know if you've seen it. It's with Brendan Fraser. It came out in 2002. It's very good. Not a war movie, but
Mhm.
he plays a CIA operative in Vietnam, in Saigon during the time. Actually, this would be before even the Vietnam War. And Michael Caine plays a British operative, and they're kind of on two separate sides. You know, Brendan Fraser's character goes in and says, "I'm going to teach these Vietnam a very American mentality, right? Of I'm
Yeah.
going to go in and impose my will." And Michael Caine's British character is very sort of apathetic to it, and it looks at those two characters, and it's wonderful. It is really, really good.
I wanna check that out.
But the other thing, so when I'm looking at American quote unquote movies, the other one that came to mind for me, there were two: American Hustle and American Gangster.
Mhm. Yep. That's
And the
that's more on, a commentary on American crime culture.
See, American Gangster though is such an interesting movie, and I don't think it's great, but I think it's interesting because the third act is so unlike every other gangster movie. Because what
Where they
happens
join
is where
forces.
they join forces and they like
Yeah.
take down police corruption. And I was like, what an interesting take for a gangster movie.
I actually love American Gangster, and I tend to watch it at least once a year. I think because it is very easy to watch.
It's pulpy enough, yet still has some sort of lofty ambition.
Yes,
Because it's
exactly.
very long too.
Oh, yeah, it is long. I mean, it was initially written as 2 scripts that was then combined into 1. But what I love about it is that it follows 2 men who live by their own code, respective to their own world, be it police world or the crime world, that in most cases are at odds with one another. However, in this case, they're able to unite against one common enemy: police corruption.
That does, I think. See, I came around on this one. American Gangster, I was like, why is it called American Gangster? It doesn't matter. And then it kind of became to me earning of that American quote unquote word in the title. Whereas something like American Hustle, which I don't like American Hustle personally, it has no reason for it to be called American Hustle. Why? It's just a con artist movie with Bradley Cooper, who's got weird looking hair, and Jennifer Lawrence in with 70s makeup. Like that's all it is.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it either as much. I mean, I like David O. Russell, but, that movie didn't stand out as one of my favorite of his films. I watched it once and I never went back to it.
It's completely forgettable.
Yeah.
And if you're going to put American in the title, you got to have some like you got to earn that to me. Unless you're American Pie, in which case you can do whatever you want because American Pie, he gave it to that pie in the most American way.
Or American Beauty.
No, see, American Beauty, I don't think earns that title either, though.
No, I don't and that's the thing, I think sometimes they use it ironically. Like, American Psycho, I think, is an ironic use of, or not ironic, it's used more as a criticism of money and status-centric culture.
The American Dream.
Yeah.
And a lot of these movies, they do try to comment something on the American Dream. I mean, American Beauty tries to do that. I mean, even though it literally uses the flower American Beauty, like those red roses, that type
Yeah.
of flower, it's called an American Beauty.
Mhm.
So it's quite literal. But it also tries to be that. I don't think American Beauty aged very well.
I've only seen it once, and it's so dark and depressing.
It's
Holy god.
it really is
I could not go back to it. I was like, "Oh god, this is a little heavy."
a little.
Yeah. But when we first started talking about the theme, my mind definitely went to war films, Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, that type of thing. But then I started thinking about space travel and Apollo 13 versus First Man and how they approach the subject of America's venture into space. What I love about First Man is that it didn't necessarily focus on the spectacle of space travel, even the way it was shot. You're not seeing the glory of the spaceship soaring through the sky. Instead, you're in the cockpit with them and you realize just how claustrophobic and scary it is. And in a sense, they stripped it down to more human terms, be it his family issues, losing his daughter, or losing his colleagues and friends. And I know it faced a lot of criticism for not focusing on the flag being placed on the surface of the moon, but it wasn't about that. It was more about humanity as a whole,
Right.
hence the title First Man. And a lot of astronauts think in those terms that when you're in space and you're given that perspective of Earth, that you can't see borders and you just see humanity as a whole. Whereas Apollo 13 is more about the spectacle and the American spirit when faced with hardship.
Apollo 13 is the pop version, the
Exactly.
popcorn version of that story, and
Yeah,
it's
the
really good. I love that movie.
Oh, it's such a fun movie, but I would definitely say I was, like, going through a space kick at one point when I was watching those movies, and I watched First Man, then I watched Apollo 13, and it was hard to watch Apollo 13 after First Man because I loved First Man so much. I felt like it went about it
Really?
in a w
Did you really?
Yeah, I really did. It's
Why?
just
I loved the score. The score was beautiful.
I listen to that score every single night. That's what I go to sleep to. But yeah, First Man, I just loved his approach to the subject. One isn't necessarily better than the other. However, First Man resonated with me much more. It was less kind of grandiose
It was
and
more than just the exploding ship in Apollo 13,
exactly, exactly.
but it's so tense though. Apollo 13 should have won Best Picture over Braveheart. That's my controversial take, personally.
That's
It
your okay.
is. Braveheart Braveheart not that great, I don't think.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
I don't think it shouldn't have won over Apollo 13,
hmm
I think,
Oh, I
personally.
loved Apollo 13 so much when I was younger, especially growing up. I mean, even when I watch it, I still have fun with it. Um,
First Man made a lot of money too. First Man grossed $105 million. I didn't know that. I thought that it kind of flopped. I had no idea.
not a lot of people were talking about it. Not that I recall. I
It did
mean,
get Oscar buzz, I remember that, and because your guy
mhm,
Damien Chazelle, he's the one who
yeah,
directed it, and I know you
yeah.
love Damien Chazelle because you love La La Land.
Yeah, more than anything, it was Whiplash that really got me into Damon Chazelle. I think he handles a lot of times the artist struggle can be self-indulgent, but he handles it very well. Like I like the way that he goes about it.
Whiplash is a tough hang. It's good, but it's so intense. I mean, J.K. Simmons is yelling the whole time. It's vicious, dude. It's not fun yelling like in Spider-Man.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't call it fun by any means, but I do like the way he explored sort of the struggle for excellence, and that if you take it too far, the thing you love so much and are working toward could eventually destroy you and cause you to almost resent it. But anyway, so as I continue to kind of look at American movies, National Treasure came to mind, Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, and a lot of times, especially the war movies,
See, you went
they're
to war movies. I went to you went to sort of more positive ones, like Apollo 13 or First Man or something like that. I weirdly, without the literal of American whatever,
yeah.
American Splendor, American Beauty, the first thing that I thought of when I thought of what personifies America and the American dream was There Will Be Blood.
Oh my god, that's crazy that you mentioned that. I actually didn't put it in there because I was like, is that too? But I was like, that is the quintessential story of a man coming up in the world, and that is in essence the American dream. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
And the just total fracture that he goes through mentally and quite literally physically, like I mean, breaks bones. I mean, goes through the explosion when the oil rig explodes and it's on
Yeah.
fire and it blows him back. It blows his kid back. Everything about that, he sacrifices so much for what he thinks is the American dream. He's an oil man
Mhm. Yeah.
and he achieves that dream. He has a big house at the end, and at the end, it's empty, and he kills Paul Dano with a whatever it
A
is bowling
bowling
pin,
pin.
and he says, "I'm done."
Yeah,
And that's it, and that was very much the American dream of you accomplished it, but at what cost?
exactly.
And then
And
I
what
also
happens when
thought
you get to that point?
exactly, and he wasn't gonna sacrifice his principles, he wasn't gonna sacrifice who he was or what he was trying to achieve through anything, even his kid. His kid goes deaf, and he's like, "Eh, whatever.
Yeah,
What are you even
basically
hearing for?"
he tosses him aside. He leaves him on a train.
Yeah, and he was like, "I didn't need you anyway."
Yeah.
And then I thought of one of the most quote unquote American characters, also played by Daniel Day Lewis, but also a villain, Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York,
Yeah.
which is quite literally his last line. "At least I died an American,"
Mhm.
which, again, he's wrapping himself in the flag. A very famous scene, right? He's wrapped in
Yeah.
the flag and he's talking to Leo, which is a little on the nose, right? But who cares? Because he's amazing in that movie. That movie's
Well,
not
it's Daniel
subtle.
Day-Lewis.
Yeah, it's not subtle. But his last line, "I died a true American." He did not give up on what he believed. He was going to die his fight.
Mhm.
And he if he'd have just maybe, I don't know, listened to Leo, been like, "Hey man, I know I killed your dad, Liam Neeson, in the beginning. Maybe we can work this out. Maybe why did we have to go through 2.5 hours of this?" Nope. In the end, he dies, but he
Well,
died an American.
I think that is a very, very fitting of our culture. At least I died an American.
Did you know? And also, speaking of There Will Be Blood, right? This is something that I just occurred to me too. There Will Be Blood, very much a Citizen Kane like story of a man who, is his own undoing. He achieves so much and yet he cannot get out of his own way. Do you know what the original title of Citizen Kane was?
Mm-mm.
The American.
Really?
Yes. It was originally written as a title or American, maybe not with the,
Yeah.
but as American, obviously it was based on William Randolph Hearst. And that movie also very much a story of a man who achieves so much but cannot get out of his own way and dies alone wishing for to go back to his own childhood, for his sled. Just a,
Yeah.
a boy wanting his sled. So again, I think that is a movie that would be very fittingly called The American.
I think it lives up to it because it does, it is about, again, the American dream and climbing and, but no one tells you
And
what
sacrificing.
exactly. And you sacrifice so much to get to that point. And a lot of times once you do get to that point, you're like, well, now what? And a lot of times it's your undoing as you realize that you work so hard for something that is usually better shared with the people around you, but you've alienated everyone by the time you got there.
And then you just wake up and you realize you're Orson Welles in fat guy makeup and you go, "What have I become?"
Yeah. You know what I watched recently actually is because of this theme was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, directed by Frank Capra, starring Jimmy Stewart. Have you seen it?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I watched it. I hadn't seen it before, and I really enjoyed it. And for those of you who haven't seen it, Jimmy Stewart plays a senator appointed to his seat following the death of one of two senators from his state. And the other senator from his state who's still alive is Senator Joseph Payne, played by Claude Rains, actually the police chief from Casablanca.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he looks up to this Senator Payne, who acts as his guide through the inner workings of Washington, and the entire film centers around this specific bill to build a dam in the state, which Payne and a prominent businessman from the state are using for their own financial gain. And when Smith proposes a bill that conflicts with Payne's bill, Payne goes on the offensive basically to impeach Smith from his Senate seat. And Jimmy Stewart plays this wide-eyed, idealistic, quote unquote boy in a sense, who is disillusioned by his discovery that Payne had been acting on the direction of a businessman who has been funding his reelection for years. And Payne himself is this conflicted character who, at one point, was a man of ideals, but is forced to forego his ideals in the name of compromise. And I think more than it is a story about corruption in Washington and all that, I think it asks the question, does our political system lend itself to corruption? And there's this moment where Payne is trying to justify to Smith why he had to compromise his ideals. And he says, you can't count on people voting. Half the time, they don't even vote. And so he feels forced to take the businessman's money in order to stay in Washington and do as much good as he can. However, in the end of the day, he is still beholden to the moneyman's will, sort of a vicious cycle. And I felt like it struck a good balance of criticizing the corruption, but also exploring why. And Joseph Payne, not necessarily the main character, but I think he's the perfect vehicle for that. And there's this great moment where Payne is kind of beginning to destroy Smith's credibility, and the reflection from a light in the room is completely covering one of his eyes, which I don't think is an accident. I mean, Joe, how long do we spend on set trying to avoid shadows and reflections and all that?
Mhm.
But it was the perfect embodiment of Payne's internal conflict, a man that is basically half blind.
And it's very idealistic in that way of some it goes, "One man can make a difference, and one man can change the system, which again is a very, very idealistic Frank Capra-esque way of doing it, hence why it's named after him, Frank Capra. That's a tone too that you're not going to really see often in movies made about politics now are probably not going to have ever have that tone again. The West Wing did it. The West Wing had that tone, kind of a Frank Capra-esque, like we're going to all band together and try to
Yeah.
do good for the sake of doing good because it is our duty to do good. That's not something that we might see in movies again, just because the tone of that, the tone of the world has shifted. And maybe that's a lie. And right, maybe that's not true. Obviously, we weren't around in 1939, but the tone of the world was probably, I mean, it was coming off the Depression. The tone of the world was not happy go lucky anyway, but it's probably, I don't know if audiences will accept that tone from especially a politics movie in today's day and age.
Well, and the more I think about that, I was thinking, will we ever see another movie that idealizes presidents that like it used to, right? But I think it always is predicated on the current administration or the current political climate. The same thing with the war movies. All the movies about Iraq or Vietnam have that dark, gritty feel to them, whereas World War II, you had that idealism, that American hope that shine through. And so I really think it depends on the current state of the world, and maybe we'll see it in the future. I hope we see it again in the future. But yeah, I really loved Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
You know what movie I hate that has the word American in it is a movie called American Ultra. Have you heard that? Have you seen that one?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
It has, so it is the antithesis of everything that we've been talking about. It uses the word American not to make a point about American politics, just like you said with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, not to make some sort of broader point about character or what it means to be an American. It just seems like it's stuck on there for no discernible reason. American Ultra, if you haven't seen it, is a movie with Jesse Eisenberg and Kristen Stewart. Oh, second time I've mentioned her in this episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, she's all American for you.
Apparently, but he plays a not an undercover CIA type of person, very Jason Bourne like. It's basically a Jason Bourne if Jason Bourne was a comedy.
Yeah.
He plays a brainwashed guy who was brainwashed by the CIA. It's based off of MK Ultra, which was the CIA project in the 70s where people tried to brainwash people and to turn them into like super soldiers. That
Hmm.
happens in American Ultra. Jesse Eisenberg was an undercover sleeper agent for the CIA and then gets activated, and Kristen Stewart was his handler, right? And it's just it doesn't need to have American in it. It doesn't. It makes no discernible difference what it was called. They just picked that because they thought it sounded cool, and it was just a waste of everyone's time.
You really
And
have a
that's the
problem
problem.
with American being in the name, don't
Yes,
you?
I do. And that's also my thing about the welcome to titles though. Welcome to the Rileys. Why? Why
What
are we
else is
welcome? Who
there?
cares?
What else has welcome in it? I'm trying to
There's a
think.
lot of them. So the
I
one
know
that
what
I
you're
thought of,
saying.
there was actually a Chris Pine movie that came out a few years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, called People Like Us. And it's a completely forgettable drama. He plays like a Wall Street guy who then I think gets fired, if I remember correctly, from Wall Street and goes back into like small town American life. But and it's actually got a lot of people in it that I like. Chris Pine, I really like. Elizabeth Banks is in it, who plays kind of his love interest. Olivia Wilde is his original girlfriend when he's a Wall Street hotshot. But the original title for it, and this really bothered me, was called Welcome to People. And that's so stupid.
What?
Welcome to People. That means nothing. He's already been around people. It's dumb. I have no other analysis for it other than I just think it's dumb. If you're going to say welcome to something, at least make it some sort of like strike an emotional resonance.
Yeah.
Welcome to Marwin was another one with Steve Carell that I have not seen that I know a lot of people are very passionate about.
I want to see that movie.
I don't know what it is, but it's Welcome to Marwin. If you're going to use a word that doesn't mean anything, make it a funny word. Marwin, that's kind of just bland to me. Like, you know that song, "Welcome to the Black Parade" by My Chemical Romance? You know, because it's 2007 again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no, I don't know the song.
You'll know the song if you hear it, but it's
Yeah,
a
I'm
real
sure if I
emo
hear it,
song,
yeah.
right? Well, My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade,
Mhm.
right? That's awesome. Oh, the Black Parade. It's so metal. Like, that
And
strikes an
Welcome to
emotional
Marwan just
core. Huh?
Marwan doesn't do anything for you.
No, Marwan does not. Black Parade, oh, let's do it.
Well, I think he's, like, creating his own little world that like, with dolls and things like that from what I recall from the trailers, so it's like, "Oh, welcome to my world," in a sense, like, from his perspective. I need to see it,
I
though.
don't
I
know. I'm not sure what it's about. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I'm being unfair to Welcome to Marwin, or maybe I'm giving too much praise to Welcome to the Black Parade. Although that song is really good. I don't know much about My Chemical Romance. I was not
I
one of
don't
the
know,
goth
yeah.
kids or one of the emo kids in high
No, you're a
school.
metal kid.
No, I wasn't though, dude. I like
Really?
metal,
Yeah.
but I wasn't a metal. Like, I don't think I'd be considered a metal kid because I played sports too much. I don't think they would
Ye
have accepted me. I
No,
don't
but
know.
you have very eclectic tastes.
I do love metal, but I also played sports, and so I don't know if they would have accepted. I don't know if the goth kids would have accepted me. Maybe I like too many Disney movies too. You can't wear Satan stars and then be like singing along to A Whole New World or Oliver and Company. Why
Joe,
should I worry?
the picture you're painting is something that I truly
You
want to
can't
see.
you can't put black eyeliner and nails on and then be singing Billy Joel songs. They kick you out. You can't do it. They don't let you in. You can't be like, "Why should I worry?"
These days, they would let you in.
Maybe they would. Maybe back
I
when we were
think
in high school, they wouldn't.
well, that's the thing is that's why I loved, uh, Jump Street, 21 Jump Street.
21 Jump Street. Oh, that's true.
I think it captures the difference between our generation, kind of like the old traditional high school
Clicks and whatnot.
archetypes. Yeah, like the archetypes and the cliques, yeah, exactly, with today's day and age and kind of like they did it very well. I really liked it. Like the fact that Jonah Hill is now accepted and
As the
then
cool kid and Channing Tatum.
yeah, Channing Tatum is kind of
Channing
like
Tatum.
shunned. Yeah. I feel like we would have fit in more in today's generation than when we were younger.
I don't know, man. I did wear a lot of black shirts, but that was mostly just because I sweat a lot. A man, you can't be a man of my girth and wear light blue t-shirts. It just doesn't work.
Well, the last movie I wanted to bring up is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
That popped into my head as we've been talking because that's Jimmy Stewart in it.
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart is one of my favorite actors. But I feel like it's still relevant because of the themes it explores and the opposing views of Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne's characters. You know, John Wayne believes that violence is necessary for the greater good and to establish law and order. And Jimmy Stewart has the view that in order to move forward to a more civilized society, that we should try to establish a strong foundation of democracy and government.
That's interesting because Liberty Valance and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, two very opposing viewpoints, even with Jimmy Stewart in them, right? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, very idealistic, very self-righteous. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance ends with Print the Legend, right? He goes through the whole story of telling the newspaper man how he was not the man who shot Liberty Valance, but it doesn't matter because he's a senator and that story is good for not him, but just what he can do as a senator. He's a good man and his reputation relies on that story, even if it's a lie. So is it really that bad that his entire life, kind of, that he's built is built on a lie if he's doing good things with it?
Exactly. I think they're interesting competing viewpoints that we're still discussing to this day. I mean, The Dark Knight explored those themes a bit as well. Well, that being said, we've discussed American movies from war and politics to space and crime, and we would love to hear from all of you. What are your favorite movies about America? Do you agree or disagree with some of the things we've discussed? Visit us on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Let us know what you think. You can find all those links at channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5.com spelled out.
We upload every Thursday, so until next time, my name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.